You're sure that this tax is going to make the difference?
The UK has done it. 20 European countries have done it. And
well, actually, they've done. That's not true.
Fact checked. Welcome back to Northern Perspective, everyone. I'm Cypher.
And I'm Fox. Vassy Kapelos met with a panel of MPs to discuss the rising grocery prices. The NDP says their party has the answer: more taxes.
Let's take a look.
Grocery bills have skyrocketed up more than 20% over the past 3 years. Now inflation is finally coming down, but that just means the skyrocketing has slowed. It doesn't mean consumers can expect a return to pre-spike prices. New data out today from Leger found 64% of Canadians think the prices they're seeing at grocery stores are continuing to get worse. Add to that a brand new report out from Food Banks Canada, which shows 1 in 4 Canadians face food insecurity and 1 in 10 are living in poverty. As you heard in the clip, the NDP is arguing it all means that it's time for a so-called excess profit tax on large grocery chains. Let's get into a debate on what the solution might look like with MPs. Talib Noor Mohammed is the Minister of Heritage's Parliamentary Secretary. Next to him, Andrew Scheer is the Conservatives' House Leader. And next to him, Don Davies is the NDP's Finance Critic. Hi, everybody. It's nice to see you. Thank you very much for making the time for the conversation. Mr. Noor Mohammed, I'll start with you. The Prime Minister at one point a number of months ago said no way, no how to the windfall tax, that it would be bad economics and essentially be passed on to consumers. Your government then threatened the use of it when last fall it was promising to force grocers to stabilize prices. What is your government's position? Are you in favor of what the NDP is proposing?
Look, I think we started out on this path with trying to work with industry. The grocery code of conduct is something that we've worked hard on with industry. We've now seen Loblaws come to the table to sign this. This is a commitment that Canadians need to see on the part of industry to be able to show that there, in fact, is a commitment to transparency. There's a commitment to ensuring that Canadians can afford the food that they need to buy. So we need to be able to continue to work with industry and to push solutions with them. If they are not prepared to work, we will use everything available in the arsenal. But the action of grocers coming on board is an indication that industry understands that they need to be part of the solution.
So here they go again. The Grocery Code of Conduct shows a commitment to giving lower prices for Canadians' food. If you saw our video, you saw what we saw, in that there is nothing, absolutely nothing, in that Grocery Code of Conduct that mentions food prices at all. It's a set of rules and suggested processes, not even mandated processes, but suggested processes between suppliers and grocers.
Well, there's an interesting stat released this week from Statistics Canada that says food prices in April actually declined by 0.3%. I'm not sure how they came about finding that number, but 64% of people in the survey we just saw felt that food prices are getting worse. I personally agree with that food prices are getting worse. So why is StatsCan say they're getting better?
Well, one possible reason for that might be, as we are approaching into the summer months, you're going to be getting more food supply from the local Canadian growers as we move into the warmer season, because in the winter months they're primarily importing it from other countries. So it's possible that that could be just a normal cycle. That would be my only guess, because I don't see any other reason that food prices would be going down.
To be clear, one grocer, after 2 years of fighting it, has now come on board. That's Loblaw. Walmart and Costco are still outstanding. Your government has not been clear about whether you're willing to force that, to make it mandatory through legislation. And I didn't hear an answer on whether or not you're supportive of what the NDP is proposing around an excess profit tax. Yes or no, does your government support such a tax?
We have said we are open to all tools available in our arsenal. Now, Loblaws coming on board is one piece of this, but we need to be able to increase competition. That's why we've been putting forward measures to revisit and open up and to improve the Competition Act. That's in the budget. Conservatives said they're going to oppose it. That's how you get foreign grocers and competition into the industry and make sure that industry is actually doing its part. And I think this is where it becomes really important to acknowledge that this is, first of all, a global phenomenon. This is not a Canadian problem. This is a global problem. Now, In that, we also recognize, therefore, that we've had to take additional steps. So putting a school food program in place to be able to get kids the food that they need every single day. Those are the types of measures that we're putting into place. In addition, $160 million to support farmers and to support the food supply across this country. Right. Those are measures to help ensure that Canadians have access to good quality food at affordable prices.
I'm certainly not indicating or insinuating or implying that inflation isn't something that was experienced elsewhere, but food prices in Canada have gone up by 20% over 3 years. Do you think it matters to Canadians if it's also going up in other parts of the world? And beyond that, what you're like when you're saying you're willing to use every tool available to you, at what point? Like at what point do you decide, hey, this isn't working, food prices are 20% higher, we're now going to do X, Y, or Z? Good
challenge, Vassy. And to answer your question, no, Canadians don't care. All Canadians care about is that food prices have gone up 20% in some cases. They've doubled on specific items. And people are eating out of the food bank in record numbers. So, but again, it goes back to a point that Fox made in one of our previous videos. Oh, well, you know, it's a global problem. It's not our problem. It's not our fault. Again, whenever something's wrong, the Liberals blame everybody else. And that's what you're hearing here. And every single solution that this guy has talked about, he must have drawn the short straw or pissed off his minister or something to end up on a panel with Andrew Scheer and Vassy coming at him. He's talking about the grocery bill, which actually does nothing to lower prices. All it does is it gives the Competition Bureau more powers to investigate. Great. Okay, so that's out. That doesn't lower prices. You have the school lunch program, which has nothing to do with food, and it's not even going to be implemented for a couple of years, even if it does pass. So that's not going to lower food prices. And I guess that's it. They haven't done anything else to actually try to lower food prices. But, you know, they're using all of the tools in their arsenal. I guess their toolbox is pretty empty.
So as you noted, you know, there is now stability. It has not been a drop, but it's been stability in food prices. You've seen the CPI come down to 2.3% this month. These are important factors that go into demonstrating that things, in fact, are on a path to improvement. There is lots more work to be done. You know, we have done everything that we can do to help, or we have continued to do the work that is required to help farmers decarbonize, do the things that are required to ensure that there is a sustainable agri-food industry in this country. Those are the steps that are part of a longer-term solution. Now, it's cold comfort
I'm not
to
talking
folks
about
today.
I understand the long term. Yeah, exactly. What about the short term? People who have 20% higher bills?
And that is why things like a school food program, putting that into place, is actually an important step. Until you're able to solve the long-term problem, you have to do things in the short term to help Canadians. And that's why I would hope that everyone here would support a school food program.
Very quickly beyond that, there is something that Food Banks Canada and other organizations like them have asked for. It's very specific. It's called a grocery and essentials benefit. Is your government in favor of that?
I think it is one of the things that we should certainly be looking at. It is one of many measures that we have available to us. We need to see whether or not industry is prepared to play ball.
What more evidence do you need? It's been years.
Well, you've now seen you've seen Loblaws, who's been reticent to come on board, and they have now come on board, and now we are now going to hopefully see some action.
Just a reminder, Loblaws isn't fully on board with this grocery code of conduct.
Yeah, they're conditionally.
They've basically said, well, we'll sign if the rest of our competitors sign. That's not exactly, you know, a hard yes.
But this is the thing, right? The Liberals are going to take even a half win and try and count it as a win and tell everybody that it's a win. Meanwhile, these are the same people, everybody, that talk about, oh, everybody else is spreading disinformation and misinformation. You're literally there saying, Loblaws has signed on. No, they haven't.
It's only misinformation and disinformation when it's something that makes the Liberals look bad.
Oh, right. I forgot my handbook.
After another 2 years, are you then prepared to do something with Walmart and Costco?
I don't think that's a fair statement, Vassy. I think we have continued to have conversations, not just with industry, but also foreign grocers to bring them in. I mean, you look at the fact that up until very recently, and in fact, thanks to many years of Conservative governments, you couldn't have two grocery stores in the same complex, right? So that has had a material impact on whether or not you could have competition. Making those changes, making it easier for people to enter, for smaller grocers to be able to enter, to be able to have competition is a big, big win for Canadians.
If in fact that does materialize, you just made those changes very recently. Let me move on to the Conservatives and Mr. Scheer, because the only solution that I've heard your party propose to address the price of food is around removing the carbon tax. The most accurate analysis I could find from an economist from the University of Calgary, Trevor Toome, assessed that essentially that would account for about 1% of the increase. So you're saving me about a cent on every dollar at the grocery store. What more would your party be prepared to do to address the cost of groceries?
Well, first of all, I have to address a couple things that were said that are just not true. Prices aren't going up in Canada because of global phenomena. Prices are going up in Canada because Justin Trudeau massively flooded the economy with brand new cash printed out of thin air. More dollars chasing fewer goods caused the inflation crisis that Canadians are suffering through. And we see the devastating results. Millions of Canadians going to the food bank for the first time. A recent report out from food banks saying that the number of visits have gone up by 50% in the last little while. In addition, the carbon tax. The carbon tax adds costs everywhere along the supply chain. And the Bank of Canada governor acknowledged that the carbon tax itself is a significant contributor to inflation across the board, but specifically on food, because when you tax the farmer that grows the food, the trucker that ships the food, the retailer that sells the food, you are increasing the price of food. So before we talk about, task forces and new taxes, why not eliminate the easiest culprit to go after, which is the government's carbon tax? That could be repealed tomorrow. You don't have to.
How much is that going to save somebody at the grocery store? Because that's what I'm putting to you. The Bank of Canada governor has talked about the impact of the carbon tax on the cost of living overall and indicated that, for example, it would save, at one point, if it were eliminated, 0.6% of the overall impact on the GP, which is not nothing. I'm not saying it's nothing, but it's specific where food is concerned. To insinuate that there are no global factors at play, there are no supply chain issues that added to the cost of groceries, that's not accurate.
The point, what the Liberals love to do, what Justin Trudeau loves to do, is he loves to externalize blame. He's been in power for 9 years. This is 9 years of Justin Trudeau's NDP Liberal coalition government. During that time, massive increases to food bank use, food insecurity, stories about middle-class families with jobs going to food banks or watering down milk. That never happened before Justin Trudeau was Prime Minister. Now it's happening all across the country. So inflation is a big part of that. Justin Trudeau massively expanded the money supply at a time when our economy was contracting, and that is what caused inflation. That inflation is always a monetary phenomenon.
That is also what saved people from going broke in the pandemic.
Well, remember, he said that he was going to go into debt so that Canadians didn't have to. Now we've seen massive inflation, massive interest rate hikes, and Canadians are suffering through all that. And he's not stopping. He's doubling down. The most important takeaway for Canadians as they examine these issues is to know that Justin Trudeau is following the exact same set of policies that caused the misery in the first place. He's not changing course. He's not admitting the error of his ways. He's going to keep hiking that carbon tax.
You heard my line of questioning to Mr. Mohammed. I'm not absolving the government of their responsibility for overseeing what has happened, but you're presenting it as a black and white situation. It's either all their fault or it's none of their fault. I don't think that's fair. That's not accurate to Canadians. And therefore, my question to you is, what would Conservatives do to actually make a difference at the grocery store? Would you support an excess profit tax? Do you think that would make a difference? Would you go beyond just cutting the carbon tax? How would a Conservative government make my bill any different at the grocery store?
And these are good questions. Okay, she should be going at Andrew Scheer as hard as she's going at the Liberals, as hard as she goes at the NDP. To her point, the Conservatives need to come to the table with more than just get rid of the carbon tax. If we take what Andrew Scheer says, okay, so there's been all this inflation. We agree with that. And a lot of it was Trudeau's fault. We agree with that. But we're here now. The problem with inflation is there's not deflation. You don't go back to what prices were years ago.
No, usually wages will gradually catch up, and they don't even catch up all the way.
Right. So the only other way that you're going to be able to do something as it relates to food is legislatively or some sort of subsidy. So the NDP are saying, oh, tax the grocers, tax the profit tax. Well, then, I don't think you're going to see a decrease in food prices. And even if you do, you're going to see increases on cosmetic and drugs. So what do you want? They're going to get it back from you at some point. So that's not going to work. But the Conservatives need to be thinking, and maybe this is probably in their election platform, which they're not planning on sharing with everybody now. Why would they? Because then they run out of a lot of steam before the election even begins.
Well, as our MP has said to us, he's said, why would we give away our platform now? The Liberals will take half of it and steal it and tell us that the other half is no good.
I've never known a tax hike to lower prices. Getting rid of a tax will absolutely lower prices. And to stabilize inflation, we will restore budget sanity by bringing in a dollar for dollar loss so that all the extra new spending that Justin Trudeau is unleashing the economy stops. That's the essential part. We have to preserve the power of the paychecks that Canadians work so hard to get. Every time Justin Trudeau floods our economy with new money, that devalues what someone has taken home in the form of their paycheck. They can buy less with it. And the government absolutely is responsible for that. Justin Trudeau was the one selling all those government bonds.
So all of inflation will go away when Conservatives stop spending more?
No, wait, when the government stops making money out of thin air, that is when you control inflation. And that has to happen. It's not happening with Justin Trudeau. He's borrowing billions and billions more. Don't just take my word for it.
Inflation is within the target rate. It's between 2 and 3% right now.
After years of massive increases, and prices are still going up. That's the other thing to remember. Just because they like to talk about stabilization, all that means is that it's going up more slowly.
Right,
but it's still going up, and it's still eroding the power of the paycheck that you bring home.
Okay, so there was a hint in there, but you had to be listening to catch it. So what he said was, we stop the deficit spending, lower inflation, and the other thing that I know the Conservatives have said before is cut taxes. So they may not be able to do anything about the current food prices, which is an actual reasonable position. So rather than them say, okay, so, you know, let's try and fail at something, which is reduce food prices from the grocery stores, I don't think that's going to happen. So what they can do is increase the amount of money Canadians have in their pockets. So that way, from a comparative point of view, the hit at the grocery store doesn't feel as bad because you end up having more money in your pocket to begin with because you're not paying the carbon tax. And you're going to be paying, according to the Conservatives, less income tax. So per paycheck, if you're bringing home more and you're not paying the carbon tax, you have more money in your wallet. That means you have more to spend at the grocery store to be able to afford and absorb these cost increases.
Now, Vassy had made a point in regards to inflation that it was at 2.7%, which typically you want inflation between 2 and 3%. So 2.7 is within that target. But let me tell you why. So let me show you this chart. The light blue lines compare March of this year, 2024, to March of last year, 2023. And the dark blue lines compare this April 2024 to April of last year 2023. So as you can see, most of these things are up. Let's take a look at food. In March, food was up 3% year over year. And in April, it was up, quote unquote, only 2.3%. Let's look at shelter. March, it was 6.5%, and April was 6.4%. Transportation, 3% in March and 3.1% in April. I mean, you've got health and personal care up, recreation, education, and reading up, alcoholic beverages, tobacco products, and recreational cannabis also up. The only things that weren't up were household operations, furnishings, and equipment, and clothing and footwear, which you could argue those two things are non-essential, but our essentials like food and shelter skyrocketed. So the only thing keeping the inflation rate at 2.7% were those two categories that brought it back down. But essentials are up. Canadians are still paying more for the essentials that we need to get by.
Right. And I think the only reason that people aren't buying clothing and footwear is they
can't afford it.
They're just not buying it, right? And household operation, furnishings, and equipment, people aren't buying furniture because they can't afford it. So it makes sense that those are going down because those are not in demand right now. So the prices would drop to try and incentivize people to buy them. But people have to get around. People have to, have something to eat. People have to have somewhere to live. So that all makes sense. So, Fox is right. Without those two, even just say they're at zero, inflation is above target. So whenever you hear a statistic, you have to dig into it, which is why we give you all of these facts.
Okay, Mr. Davies, I want to get the NDP in on this because you're the one proposing this excess windfall tax or excess profit tax. What evidence do you have that it would actually lower prices for Canadians?
I'm glad you used the word evidence because it's nice to get back to some actual numbers here. So as you pointed out, grocery prices have gone up over 21% in the last 3 years. Statistics Canada says that grocery prices, profits have doubled in the last 5 years. And the Competition Tribunal says that...
Not the profit margins, to be fair, their profits.
The gross profits have doubled in the last 5 years. The Competition Tribunal last summer in June stated that grocery prices are rising at the fastest level in 40 years. At the same time, you have millions of Canadians experiencing food insecurity. As you pointed out, 1 in 4 people in this country between the ages of 18 and 24 are going to food banks. We have not seen this kind of food insecurity in this country for a long time. Now, what's the cause of this? It's clearly greedflation. We had 8 major grocery chains in this country in 1984. We now have 5. There's 5 major grocery chains. And in our view, they are clearly abusing their monopoly in the marketplace to gouge consumers. Anybody who goes to a grocery store in the last year will tell you that. Prices have gone way out of whack, and that's when products are shrinking at the same time. Now, to Mr. Scheer's point that he thinks that it's a flooding of money into the economy, Canadians aren't going to the grocery stores buying more food than they ever did before. There's no increased demand for food. Food demand is the same.
No increased demand for food? How many people have come into this country between June of last year and now? It's well over 1 million.
Well, and I'm not sure if you saw Andrew Scheer's face. He was like turning around like, dude, what have you been smoking? Andrew Scheer wasn't even talking about demand, never mind the fact that Fox is right. Don Davies, do you not know how inflation works?
No, he doesn't.
Like, oh my goodness. Like, okay, so just for numbers' sake, and we've talked about this before on a previous video in terms of the grocery store profit margins, which I'm glad Vassy brought up to him. Like, the profit margin has not changed. But the NDP is like, oh, they're making more profits than ever. Their profit margin has not changed.
No, the raw numbers have changed because A, inflation, and B, like I just finished saying, there's over 1 million more people in this country within the past year.
So let's just talk about profit margin and inflation just for a minute, just so we're all clear on this. So let's say a grocery store is selling something for $10, and let's say their profit margin is 10% on that. So they make $1 on that, okay? Now, let's say that product has doubled in price. So what would the profit margin be on a $20 product with a 10% profit margin?
$2.
$2.
But the profit margin has remained the same.
So what the NDP are arguing is, oh, well, they've doubled their profits.
Dollar value, yeah.
Dollar value, yeah. But in terms of inflation and the value of that, it's the same.
Well, and their percent profit is the same.
Right. It's the same. So the margin hasn't changed.
Well, that's it. They're lying to the Canadian public about the numbers. Or I don't even know if lying is the right word, but definitely misleading the Canadian public about the numbers. And they're doing it on purpose to fit their narrative.
It's the prices. It's the prices that have gone up.
But my question to you, Mr. Davies, respectfully, was whether or not adding an extra tax to these stores will actually lower the price for consumers. Because to Mr. Scheer's point, normally when a corporation or anybody else is taxed in excess or extra taxation, they will pass that on to the consumers. What is to prohibit that from happening?
Not necessarily. Not only will it help.
Look on Vassy when Davey said not necessarily, she's like, who am I talking to?
Yeah, clearly this guy does not have a degree in economics. I mean, neither do I, but I kind of understand the basics.
But like, come on, man. Mind you, this is the same guy who stood up and said to Jagmeet at the convention, we will accept nothing less than a full universal pharmacare program.
Well, I guess they've accepted less than a full universal pharmacare program.
Yeah, much less.
But it has helped. So during World War II, we brought in a lot of profit mechanisms in order to stop gouging. When you have an emergency like we had with COVID, there are certain industries that will take advantage of that situation and drastically raise their prices. You have to make sure, particularly when you have a monopoly situation, that that doesn't happen. We brought in a excess profits tax in this country in 2022. on the banks and financial institutions.
So are you looking for that, like a one-time 1%?
It could be temporary. Now, this is on excess profits. We understand that the grocery industry has to experience profits. When there's excess profits that you can credibly say are the result of gouging, price gouging, abusing your dominant place in the marketplace.
Do you have credible evidence of it? With all due respect,
absolutely.
The margins have increased
store.
According to that Competition Bureau report that you referenced, modest yet meaningful amount of 1 or 2 percentage points. That's excessive to you?
What happens in the grocery industry is margins are low, but volumes are high. What the Competition Tribunal found was each increase in margins of 1% represents $1 billion of excess cost to consumers in Canada.
So because more people are buying food, that's the problem? What? Wait a minute. Basically what they're saying is because, they're saying don't worry about the percentage points. Worry about the fact that we've been bringing in 500,000 to 1 million people into Canada every year, and all those people need food. So all those people are going to the grocery stores, and because there's all these new people, and the grocery stores are making money off of all those new people, surprise, surprise, that's what businesses do. Now we should worry about it, and now we're going to call it excess profit. This is insanity, and it is socialism at its finest.
So that's why when the grocery industry says, oh no, we're a low margin industry and margins have gone up only a little bit, that results in massive prices. And you know where the proof of that is? At the grocery store. Walk in and buy a loaf of bread. Walk in and buy a pound of beef. Walk in and buy some chicken breasts, and you will see that prices are outrageous. Product sizes have shrunk.
And you're sure that this tax is going to make the difference?
The UK has done it. 20 European countries have done it. And
actually, they've done. That's not true. Some of those European countries have only levied it on oil and gas companies, which did see a far bigger increase in profit margins, not on grocery stores. Only Portugal is the only country I could find who did that.
Fact checked. Fact checked. Nice try, NDP. Oh, all of Europe's done it. Actually, none of Europe's done it. Wow. I think these guys seriously come on this show and they think that Vassy doesn't do her homework. She's not going to do one of these shows unless she really knows her stuff, because she knows her job is to hold these guys' feet to the fire. All of them.
Factors change, but the device works the same. Now, the thing about an excess profits tax is it does a couple things. It sends a message to the industry that any attempt to gouge will be met with excess taxes. Second of all, it returns some tax dollars to the government for the subsidies that we've given them. You might remember that this government gave $26 million to these major companies for freezers. And finally, what it does, it provides a source of money for a national school nutrition program and to give a GST rebate to Canadians that will put money in their pockets and actually help them buy for the food.
I have time for one 30-second final point from each of you, Mr. Noor Mohammed. Yes or no to what Mr. Davies is proposing?
Well, what I did want to say is Mr. Scheer's given us a masterclass in misinformation, lack of data, lack of evidence, and the fact this notion that somehow eliminating the carbon tax is going to, price on pollution, is going to somehow be the salvation. I think you rightly pointed out it's a 1% factor. The reality is that this is a global challenge that we're all dealing with. Canada has one of the lowest inflation rates in the world. In the G7, we are doing all that we can with industry, and if industry isn't prepared to play ball, we've got lots of tools in the arsenal we're prepared to use. So
you haven't really answered at what point you make that determination. Like, isn't 20% enough of a place to make a move?
Well, I think, as we have said, we would not be actively engaging in this if we didn't think it was a serious challenge that we're dealing with, and we will continue to do so.
They decided that this was something that they needed to handle after the Conservatives started kicking the tar out of them last summer. That's when they decided that this was serious. That's also the time that they decided that housing affordability should be serious. That's when they decided that affordability in general was serious, because that is what was getting their teeth knocked in the polls. Right.
Canadians were running away from the Liberals because they caused this mess, and they were running to the Conservatives who were talking common sense.
And the problem is the Liberals have been rushing in all of these half-baked, half-assed programs that Canadians have seen right through it and said, yeah, Yeah, it's only the, you know, because the polls are down that you're doing this now. Screw you.
You've rightly pointed out, in your conversation with Mr. Davies, that there is not a whole lot of evidence that doing an excess profits tax delivers you the value in terms of value to consumer.
So why did you threaten it in the fall?
So I think
or do it to the banks.
It is one of the tools available to us. So we have to be able to walk and chew gum at the same time and do multiple things at multiple points in time to try and solve the problem. And Conservatives will give you one solution. Our job is to make sure that there are many solutions that will actually deliver value to Canadians.
Does Mr. Mohammed have a point, Mr. Scheer, that you're offering one solution around the carbon tax that won't actually do much of a lot for Canadians at the grocery store?
Well, I think the important thing to remember is that we're offering a solution. They're just offering more of the same failed policies that caused the crisis in the first place. Why not start with the low-hanging fruit? The second the finance minister comes into the House of Commons and tables a motion to eliminate the carbon tax, that comes off. That comes off immediately. Why not do that first? We know it's ineffective on the environment side. We know it's
because it might not be the most effective thing for the cost of living.
But it is absolutely the simplest thing to do, and it will have a real impact. All this data shows that, yes, the carbon tax adds to inflation and it adds to the increased cost of food prices. We could also start with stopping the Liberal practice of underwriting some of these large grocery chains with some of the handouts that they've given away from tax dollars, and focus more on preserving the power of your paycheck by fixing the budget, ensuring that inflation comes down and interest rates come down, and eliminating the carbon tax so there's more money in people's pockets and they don't pay those extra prices at the store.
Again, it's
right there. People are so focused on these specific issues. The good thing about the Conservatives is that they have a very macro view of the budget and a macro view of impact. So let's just take Vassy's point. So you take off the carbon tax. That reduces the price of food by 1%. Okay, fine. To Andrew's point, it's low-hanging fruit. It's one of the easiest things that you can do. Snap of a finger, and it's gone. It'll take some time to get its way through the system, but it's gone. Now, what it will also do is it makes you spend less per month on heating, less per month on gas, less per month on clothes, less per month on every other product other than food. What does that do? That puts money back in your pocket. So your starting point of the amount of cash that you have gets increased. And then if they control this deficit spending, the interest rates come down. Well, now you have more money in your pocket because you're not spending it on interest, are you? So that you have even more money in your pocket. So again, they're not going to be able to do a lot to reduce the prices of food, but they can do a lot to put that money back in our pockets that Trudeau keeps taking out.
1% of what they're paying, according to the analysis. Last word to you, Mr. Davies. Look, your colleagues have both pointed out that there are other things. For example, the subsidies to grocery stores. You're supporting the government that's making those to fix their fridges and things like that. Aren't there other ways beyond this tax that you could address the issue for Canadians?
Actually, right now, Canadians, millions of them, are hungry and they're hurting. What the Liberals want to do is go cap in hand to the industry to listen and talk. What the Conservatives want to do is protect corporate. We're not supporting them on lots of issues. We're supporting them on the Competent Supply Agreement. And the Conservatives want to protect corporate profits. The NDP wants immediate action now. We're the only people that are proposing concrete proposals right now that'll put money in Canadians' pockets immediately and fund concrete programs to actually put food in kids' stomachs in September. That's what needs to happen.
Again, is there evidence that will actually happen?
Absolutely there is.
That was a train wreck.
Was Davies serious at the end? Well, we don't support them on a lot of things. We just support them on the Confidence and Supply Agreement.
Right? The most important thing.
Right. So if the Liberals are not doing what you want on everything else, why are you continuing to support them? Oh, I know. It's because you guys have no hope of keeping your seats in the next election, so you don't want to call one. Well,
and the other thing is this is the only time that they're going to be relevant in this country, probably for the next 25 years.
Jagmeet Singh has completely destroyed that party. Like, there's no going back from this.
100%. There's going to be very, very few NDP MPs left, and they're not even going to have party status after this. Like, there's no way.
Serves them right. Look what they've done to this country. Look what they've done to Canadians.
Yeah, all they've done is they've decided to be a kickstand to the Liberals this whole time to hold up their failing government. But, ladies and gentlemen, the good news is that what you have to look forward to when the Conservatives get into power is you're going to have a heck of a lot more money in your pocket to be able to actually afford some of these price increases.